back in. Today we're discussing our favorite must-add players ahead of week one. Let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start with the running back position here. And the first player we're going to talk about is Ollie Gordon, rostered in 25% of leagues. Jalen Wright looks like the odd man out of this running back rotation right now, with Achane appearing to be on track for week one after suffering a calf injury. But he does sound like he should be good to go for week one. But Ollie Gordon had a strong camp and preseason. And really, at this point, Jalen Wright has actually shown absolutely nothing at this point. And so Ollie Gordon, I think, is a very interesting option to add right now. And somebody I think that could come out of week one as an option to be the number one waiver ad for the week. Gordon, right now, if you're not familiar with him, he was a 6th-round pick out of Oklahoma State. He was a Doak Walker Award winner in 2023 as a nation's best running back, rushing for 1,700 rushing yards, 22 touchdowns, and hauled in 39 passes for 330 yards. Now, last season at Oklahoma State, he fell off a little bit, only had 858 rushing yards, but did score 14 touchdowns and hauled in an additional 30 passes for 201 yards as well. Now, he's not the best athlete in the world, but at 6'1", 226 pounds, he is a kind of a similar type build, so similar type athleticism to someone like Tyler Algier. It can earn a significant role in this backfield as kind of that change of pace, goal line back. And we've seen in years past, Raheem Mostert had a huge season in this backfield with Devon Achane. And so he's not going to be a player who handles like significant workload from this backfield. So there's going to be room for another player here. And I do think that's going to be Ollie Gordon at this point. Alexander Madison, who they brought in, is out for the year with a neck injury. And then, like I said, Jalen Wright just hasn't looked very good. So Ollie Gordon is the dude that I really want to do whatever I can to get rostered. Only rostered in 25% of leagues. I think he could be a little bit of a big time hit here to start the season. Next up is going to be this Browns backfield. Dylan Sampson, 40% rostered right now. The Browns backfield is a mess. 2nd-round pick Quinshon Judkins has yet to sign a contract. And the longer he misses, the lower the chances that he will have to make a real impact this season. He's already missed preseason. He's already missed camp. Now, while Judkins was selected in the 2nd round, Sampson was actually selected in the 4th round out of the University of Tennessee. He stands 5'8", 200 pounds. Offers decent athleticism. He broke out in his final year, rushing for 1,500 yards, 22 touchdowns. He had 20 catches and 143 receiving yards. Well, we already know what to kind of expect from Jerome Ford at this point, but I think Dylan Sampson offers the higher ceiling and the higher upside in this backfield. I think he's going to have a role no matter what. And I think even when Judkins does eventually sign his contracts, and I think it's going to take him time. Like I said, he's missed camp, he's missed preseason. Like there's going to be a pretty big learning curve that he's going to have to undertake to be able to get reps in this backfield. And so it could be till the second half of the season to where Judkins really has any sort of role here. But I still think Dylan Sampson would secure a role maybe as a 3rd down back, because that's not really Judkins' game. He is much more of a 1st and 2nd down back here in this backfield. And so Sampson, I think either way, is going to have a role within this offense and somebody that we should definitely be interested in. Next up is going to be Jaden Blue, rostered in 36% of leagues. Now, he dodged a bullet in the final preseason game, which what looked to be a high ankle sprain turns out to just be a regular old ankle sprain. Good news there. And he sounds like he could possibly be ready to go week one. Now, this is a depth chart that's not going to be hard for him to overtake. You have Miles Sanders, who is ahead of him right now. And then you have Javonte Williams, who's the starter. Now, Miles Sanders, I'm not really all that concerned about. I definitely think Jaden Blue can carve himself out of a role here, change of pace back. I don't think Javonte Williams is going to be somebody who's going to handle 70, 80% of the rush attempts or anything like that. And so I think there's definite room here for somebody else. And I think that could be Jaden Blue, somebody that I definitely want to have on my roster as well. I think all these players offer some sort of upside. Maybe it's not an immediate right out the gate, but I think in short order, these guys are going to have opportunity. And one thing that all these guys have in common that we're talking about here is these are a little bit more ambiguous backfields outside of the Dolphin situation, because obviously Devon Achane. But other than that, these are all situations where these running backs could take over as the lead back here at some point this season. And these are the guys we want to take a shot on. Remember Bucky Irving last year, that's how it happened with him. Kind of started slow, kind of worked in, but by week 4 or 5, he really started to get more and more involved in his backfield. And this is kind of what we're looking for with these running backs. And so lastly, I want to hit on Woody Marks, who fills out the same profile here, because his backfield is also a mix. Right now, it looks like Joe Mixon is either going to miss a large portion of the season, but there's a lot of smoke and fire behind the fact that he may just miss this entire season. And so I hope you didn't draft Joe Mixon. If you're drafting this weekend, I don't care where he falls to, unless he falls to like the 13th, 14th round, you want to take a shot on him. But he's going to go well ahead of that. I want no part of Joe Mixon this year. This feels like a CMC situation all over again. I want no part of it. And so you have to look at the other options here. Right now, you have Nick Chubb, who is entering his age 30 season, who's had significant injuries so far throughout his career. And just all the reports sound like he is just washed. I love Nick Chubb, but I just don't think there's a lot left in the tank there for him. And so you have Woody Marks, who they traded up. They traded a next year's third round pick to come back and get Woody Marks. So this is definitely someone that they have a lot of interest in. I think at the very least, he's going to have a role no matter what as the pass catching back because Nick Chubb doesn't get passes. I will say, but certainly something to monitor, and that's Dameon Pierce. I know people may roll their eyes at that because he didn't really do a whole lot last year. He did have a couple big games, ripped off at a return for a touchdown as well last year. But last year, Folk as the offensive coordinator last year, that scheme was not set up for success for Dameon Pierce. But now with Nick Caley coming over as the offensive coordinator, this power run scheme that he's going to be running is much better suited for Dameon Pierce. Nick Caley has talked about this and that he liked Dameon Pierce coming out of Florida. So I wouldn't be surprised at some point this year that Dameon Pierce could actually maybe take over like an early down work here from Nick Chubb because I just don't think Nick Chubb has anything left. But either way, Woody Marks PPR formats is going to have a role no matter what within this backfield. So he's another player that I definitely think should be added in way more leagues than he is right now. The next couple groups that we have here, we have Handcuff Plus. These are basically running backs that are going to have some sort of role in their backfield. It may not be a significant one, but are definitely going to have some sort of role. And those are the type of players that I would rather have on my bench right now. Because players that if I need to, I can plug them in and they can earn it maybe even more role as things move forward. But Ray Davis certainly is that guy. I think it's probably more of like a 5 to 6 touch game. He's going to get some goal line work as well. It might be a little bit harder to trust on a week-to-week basis, but either way, Ray Davis certainly should be rostered more leagues than he's in right now. Trey Benson, a player I really like. James Conner has always missed time. Last year was really the first year he pretty much stayed healthy for most of the season, but James Conner has always notoriously been somebody that has missed time throughout a season, and so I think Trey Benson definitely is somebody that should be on benches right now. I'm not calling an injury to James Conner, but he is getting up there. He's almost 30 years old at this point. And so Trey Benson is certainly one of those players and actually looked pretty good on a limited opportunity that he got last year. So next up is going to be Kyle Monangai. Now, early in camp, we thought Roshan Johnson was going to be the short yardage back, the goal line back, kind of like how Jamal Williams was with Ben Johnson when DeAndre Swift was with the Lions. But Roshan Johnson has missed a lot of camp. He's been hurt, and so right now, we had GM Ryan Poles come out and talk about Kyle Monangai and talk about how much they like him and how much they've impressed him. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point early in the season that he's going to get opportunities because I don't see DeAndre Swift being this workhorse back. That's not something we've ever really seen in the Ben Johnson offense. He tends to want more of a committee approach, and so Monangai could definitely be that dude. Next up is going to be Brashad Smith. Now, this is more of a PPR only because I don't think he's ever going to have, at least this year, he's never going to be somebody that carves out a significant role in the running game. Like, he's not going to be a guy that gets 10, 12 touches a game on the ground. He's going to be utilized more in the passing. And we saw it in the final preseason game where he was targeted twice. He dropped one of them, caught another one. But this is something that we've seen a lot through camp is that willingness to get him involved with the passing game. So I think in PPR formats at the very least, I know people have called him Jerick McKinnon 2.0. I wouldn't go that far yet. I think he definitely is going to need to improve in the passing game, improve as a pass protector. Jerick McKinnon was an elite pass pro. That is not something that I would say with Brashad Smith. But either way, he's going to have some sort of role. And then you have your more traditional handcuffs. These are guys that I really don't want to have too many of on my roster to start out the season. I don't mind having one or two of them, but I don't want my bench loaded with these guys because it's simply going to take an injury for these guys to be relevant. And you hold on to these dudes all year, or when bye weeks come, these are the guys the first ones to go. Let's move over to the wide receivers, though, and let's talk about some of these guys. Let's talk about Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims is rostered in 45% of leagues. He enters year 3. This could finally be considered a breakout. We saw him last year at the end of the last season smash down the stretch, scoring 19.9, 30.2, and 22.1 in 3 of his last 5 games. He was also second in fantasy points per route run among all wide receivers. Now, during the preseason, Mims has actually played 82% of the snaps with Bo Nix, and that is a sizable jump from the 29.7 route participation that he saw last year. So if this is what we're going to continue to see, Marvin Mims could absolutely crush this year and be a viable wide receiver 3 on a weekly basis. Last year, he was 8th in yards after the catch, and he was 4th in yards per route run. So there's a lot to like with Marvin Mims. Next up is going to be Adam Thielen. Now, this is a very short-term move for me because I think once Jordan Addison comes back from suspension, but he was traded today, Adam Thielen was, to the Minnesota Vikings. Now, he is 35 years old, but he did average 14 fantasy points per game, and he was top 5 in yards per route run last year. And like I said, with Jordan Addison suspended for the first 3 games, he's going to have the ability to carve out a pretty decent role within this offense. If he can get going early and put up some points, he is somebody that I would definitely maybe look to trade and flip. Because once Jordan Addison comes back, it's going to get a little bit more crowded because you also have TJ Hawkinson, who's here as well, plus the running back. So I think Thielen is a fine early season ad, but not somebody that I think is a long-term option here within this offense. Next up is going to be Jalen Coker. Now, as we talked about, Thielen was just traded, and I actually think this opens the door for Jalen Coker to have a bigger role within this offense. Coker had a very strong camp. Now, his rookie season was very mid at best, but last year he saw a 14% target share. His 10.4 yards per target, though, we're top 7. But I think with the additions of Ted McMillan, this takes some pressure off everybody else. And I think now with Thielen gone, I think you can see Coker as every down wide receiver. And I do think this offense is going to be better than it was for the majority of last season. You have to remember, majority of last year, this offense was absolutely dreadful. But once they brought Bryce Young back, that's when everything started to take off. And so, year 2, Dave Canales' offense, Bryce Young, I think this offense is a lot better. And I think Jalen Coker could carve out a pretty nice role, maybe be like a wide receiver 4 this year. So he's certainly somebody that should be on your radar. Hollywood Brown, we got the Rashee Rice news today. He was suspended for the first 6 weeks, but Hollywood Brown is only still rostered in 32% of leagues, has missed a decent chunk of camp due to an injury, but it was called minor, and he's now back at practice and should be ready to go for week 1. But let's not forget last year, once he returned from injury, that he received 15 targets over the first 2 games of the season last year. And Brown should carve out a pretty sizable role. I could see anywhere from 18 to 20% target share in an offense that throws the ball at a top 5 rate in the league. And so Hollywood Brown, I think, is definitely deserving to be rostered way more than 32% of leagues. And if you're somebody that is needing some depth at wide receiver, I think Hollywood Brown would be a definite add for me. Next up is going to be Christian Kirk. Kirk was acquired by the Texans this offseason and is lined to be this team's starting slot wide receiver. Nick Caley comes from the Sean McVay coaching tree. McVay runs notoriously a high percentage of 11 personnel. And so I think Kirk is in line to be damn near an every down starter. The Texans run game, like I've mentioned, is an absolute mess. I think this team's going to throw the ball a lot this year. And so I think Christian Kirk can easily see over 100 targets within this offense this year and should be rostered more than 48% of leagues. I like Jaden Higgins. I think he's somebody that maybe is more of a candidate of a second half breakout. But either way, Christian Kirk should be rostered more than this, especially early in the year. PPR formats, he's going to see targets. Lastly, it's kind of Dante Thornton Jr. I didn't really know what to do with him here because at first I thought, well, maybe he should be more of over in a deeper league ad. But I decided to put him here in the middle, more of a must add, probably more of a 12-team league and above. But if you're not familiar with him, Thornton was drafted in the 4th round by the Raiders. He's 6'5", 205 pounds. They ran a blazing 4.340, and he crushed camp and the preseason. It appears to have an every down role as this team's X wide receiver. Yeah, Jacoby Myers requesting a trade situation going on. They did bring in Amari Cooper. I don't care about Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper's cooked at this point. He was terrible for most of last year. I know he was dealing with a little bit of an injury, but either way, I mean, if he was really still that dude, he would have been signed way before, late August. So I don't think there's a lot left to take there for Amari Cooper. So I do think there's a scenario here where Dante Thornton Jr. ends up being that dude. It's somebody that at least earns targets at a reasonable rate. So he's at least worth an ad to see kind of how this thing plays out if you have the bench space to do it. And then lastly, you have one of the deeper league guys. Luther Burden is super interesting to me. I think he's going to be more of a guy that's more of a second half breakout type of option here within this wide receiver room because right now you have Olamide Zaccheaus running as the slot wide receiver. Remember, Ben Johnson talked a lot about Luther Burden, about how much they like him, compared him a little bit to Amon-Ra St. Brown. We know that Ben Johnson runs his offenses through the slot, and so Luther Burden at some point should take over this room. But I will say it is a very crowded wide receiver room with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Colson Loveland and Cole Kmet and DeAndre Swift. And so it's going to be a little bit tougher. But in really deep formats, 14 leagues, 16-team leagues, I kind of like having Luther Burden there on the bench because he's a super dynamic wide receiver, great yards after the catch guy. And so I do think at some point he earns a way to get more playing time. I like Ao Manor is somebody that has kind of gotten a lot of buzz recently. In the preseason games where he played with Cam Ward, I mean, he was absolutely blistered with targets from Cam Ward. I saw like a 60% target share. I will say Calvin Ridley wasn't playing in those games. So this isn't somebody who's just going to step right into some huge role. Calvin Ridley is going to be that dude. Chigakonkwo is going to see targets. But this is a very interesting prospect here with not a lot of weapons here with this offense. And this offense is being a little bit slept on. If Cam Ward is really the dude, the number 1 overall pick that he is, we could see this offense be a lot better than what we think that it is. And this offensive line, they did a hell of a job rebuilding this offensive line. It's going to be way better than it was. And this is one of the free offense. Even Calvin Ridley's going like the seventh, eighth round. Like nobody's excited about this offense. Like Ao Manor is somebody that could end up popping really early, and somebody that is people are running out to try to add from this Titans offense. Same goes with Isaac Tesla. Somebody who absolutely crushed preseason. He looks like he's the number 3 wide receiver within this offense, but I think he needs more of an injury to be really more of an impact player. But there's no denying this dude is an absolute freak athlete out there. The rest of the guys that are on this list here, like guys like Jaden Higgins, Kyle Williams, like these are more wait and see type situations. Trey Harris, I think that was blocked because they signed Keenan Allen. I don't think he has much more of an opportunity. Malik Washington's kind of an interesting name. He's drawn some buzz here in camp. But overall, I think the rest of these guys are much more deeper league type players. That's somebody that I think you have to run out and add. So with that being said, if you have any questions, whether they're waiver ads, maybe who you should add, who you should drop, let us know in the comments section below. If you have week one start sit questions, you can also drop them in here. We'll answer every single one of them. We always do. Or if you need to, we also have a free, no strings attached Discord that you can join. Link is in the description below. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.